Read. Good evening. Today is a regular work session. We're going to have some wonderful presentations from some of our volunteer groups. It's Wednesday, April 10th. We're going to say the pledge and then go into the meeting. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Oh, you don't have an agenda down there? Okay. All right, let's just do announcements. I think I have somebody that wants to do an announcement. To my left, Bob Pritchie.
Yes, thank you. The Firefighter Association of the State of New York does an annual, I think this is the 14th annual, what they call Recruit New York. And it's local firehouses, fire departments open up their doors to the residents to come see what we're all about, maybe pick up some prospective members. So this Sunday, the 14th, from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. down at Fire Headquarters at 21 State Street, we will have apparatus, there'll be demonstrations, we'll be giving some rides to the children, not the parents, the children. If the parents join, they could ride all they want. But please come out and see what we're all about. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Just want to add a little bit to that. Aside from the fun aspects that kids love, the big red trucks, big and little kids, you know, there are careers all over the country in firefighting. It's also sometimes a platform for other emergency first responders. So if you have even a little bit older kids who want to learn more about it, might even want to volunteer. Where is the junior group? What age does that start at, Bob?
Juniors go from 14 to 21.
Right. It's in some areas of the country, including in New York, like New York City, they're actual full-time careers. Others, it's volunteer. We have the largest volunteer group in the state of New York. We're very proud of that. But it's all over the country, frankly, all over the world. So it could be careers for some of you folks who might be tuning into this and are interested for your kids. It's also a very honorable career path. Men, women, everybody, right? So I think that's just something to be on the lookout for. Any other? No, I just want to read a quick summary, which will be interesting because I forgot my glasses at home. So we'll see how close I get to getting this right. The village right now is involved in about 27 major projects that are in the works. They're in the pipeline. That's a lot. In case people want a perspective, we used to do about one every 2 or 3 years. 27 is a lot of projects. That's going to keep not only every staff member of the municipality is involved in it, from police to fire to municipal staff to building departments to everybody, and our volunteer groups, some of whom are speaking today. This year, we're going to focus on infrastructure and community development projects that are part of our revitalization efforts. We're in the design phase for the multimodal transportation hub and Route 9, where we plan to redo it, similar to the rest of the communities on Route 9 as you head south of here. For example, Tarrytown, parking, a little bit better for the business district. But for me personally, the most important part of it as your mayor is that we have a community center that's highly used right on Route 9, and it really is a challenge to cross from one part to the other of this community. It's really unsafe, so safety is really of highest priority. The projects will be under construction 2025, which is around the corner. The pool is finally refurbished and open, and we're all happy about that. We know that it took a little bit longer than we expected, but a lot of infrastructure projects do go that way, and some don't. Some happen very quickly. So we're going to move forward. The important part of it is just the first part of major infrastructure improvements and ergonomic improvements and community usage improvements that we have planned over the next couple of years. So this really is the beginning of much larger projects that we're taking on. The community center is open 7 days a week. which is not typical in Westchester County, just for the record, especially for villages, and it is highly used from the pool to the seniors to really, it's multi-generational, et cetera. And it's used for the school program. We've issued an RFP for architectural services for renovation of the rest of the community center. So that's where we are with that. We're breaking ground on the new water treatment plant this summer. That's probably the largest infrastructure project we have. And it is unfortunate that since COVID, the cost of goods, and all of you that are breathing, frankly, because it doesn't matter if you own or you rent or you have a business, you're employed by a corporation, doesn't matter what you do, we've all seen about a 30% increase in costs on, like, you know, everything from pizza to housing. So it is what it is. We have Dale will be speaking later. We are known to be very conservative on our budgets. So thankfully, we have predicted some of this. I don't know if we predicted a third. So we are in pretty good shape to move forward. We do look for grants from government, and we've been very actively seeking every single grant available. Unfortunately, we're not the only municipality that seeks grants. The reason we look for grants, it's not free money because it's all coming from all of us. We all put it into the system, but it is money that comes back to us from where higher level government like state and federal for infrastructure improvement, because the more grants we get, the less of a burden it is on our tax base and our taxpayer, which is mostly in this community, single family homeowners. There are different structures in cities, there are different structures in other municipalities. So the staff has really spent, I think in the past 2 years, more time than ever trying to get grants. And we've gone some, we want to get more. So that's where we are. That was just my recap. I don't do that often in this episode, but I think, you know, a couple of times a year it's worthwhile. And we can start with the meeting. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight's an exciting work session because tonight we have our land use boards here to present on what they do for the community. It is a tremendous volunteer effort, and we appreciate their efforts and every single one of them. First off, I am very pleased to introduce Seth Roy, who is the chair of our planning board.
Hello, Seth. Is that okay for you? Because I think you can also sit if you want. Which is more comfortable? Okay. Sometimes that microphone's sort of not the most comfortable.
I'll try this. Can you hear me?
I think
All
it's
right.
great.
Good evening, trustees and mayor. So yes, Seth Roy, planning board chair. I am just going to give you a really brief update on where we are, and just identify. I think really what I wanted to do was it was just kind of follow up on a couple of items, that your board has kind of presented to us over the last couple of years. Give you an update on how they're working, some ways that they're working well, and maybe in a couple of areas where at least down the road we see we may need some tweaking and twisting. But we've had a very robust agenda, as your kind of opening remarks have noted. So and a full range of porch additions to major development projects that have been filling our meetings, and it's been really great to see all of the activity going on in the village. I think one of the recent changes that came with the with the plan in 2021 with the Ossining with the comprehensive plan, thank you, was the introduction of the form-based plan overlay districts, which has been kind of great to see. And I think that was, from my perspective, one of the great kind of additions to the zoning code as part of that change. And just as a reiteration of what that was, it allows, rather than kind of a strict zoning law based on area, it kind of uses more architectural elements and kind of spatial design into the streetscape, and allows buildings to kind of creates a different set of parameters for buildings to be built to make them look and work well in the community in exchange for changing some of the ways that the buildings can be used, including allowing residential use on the ground floor, which is obviously a benefit in many cases, especially to people who are developing buildings. So at this point, we've had over 2 years of reviewing projects, and a handful have come across our projects, across our agendas, that have applied for their uses and for their site plans under this review strata. And what we're finding is, while some of them fit really well, and there's always tweaks, and each lot is unique, and that others, it almost feels like we're they're applying under the form-based code, whether it's an existing building, modification of an existing building, or a new building. But the projects that we're seeing they're so full of exceptions and tweaks and turns that don't go to the zoning board, they stay to our boards. This is one of the unique components of the overlay district, is that the planning board, rather than the zoning board, has certain authorities to allow, if sidewalk needs to be at least 7 feet, and we need to, they only have 6 feet. So that's something that's considered minor to the planning board. There's a lot of little examples like that. And we're finding is a lot of these projects that are, we're being faced with a kind of a barrage of these, and we're being forced as a board to kind of put our heads together and decide, is this the right way for this project to proceed or not? Which ultimately puts a burden on the applicant, because now they've gotten so far down the road, and they're finding, and we wind up in a situation where the entire paradigm for their application needs to be shifted, and it maybe fits more with a traditional use variance type application. So this is happening multiple times especially over the last 18 months. And so just think it's worth looking at, and that there may come a time where we want to clarify up front, before you apply under the form-based code, that whether it's a stricter set of checklist that needs to be carried out. It's a little bit harder, I think, for us to envision right now, but I think we may at some point be coming back to you with more with a request for more clarification in that. So that's been a lot of our that's come up several times. Another area which is more recent, where your board has acted, and I think another positive change for the village is the payment in lieu of parking, which is, I can see it on the horizon in our agendas, hasn't quite come up, but I just wanted to say that now that when I see these projects coming up where we realize that there may be a parking issue, I can definitely see that this is going to really help both the applicants, our board, and the process in general just move more quickly, more efficiently, and really allow for especially the existing buildings in our community to really operate to their full capacity. So that's been something that we're really quite happy about. So I mean, that's where I wanted to go. I think the only other kind of comment that I wanted to make was one I think that's probably come up in this meeting the last couple of years, and this is just a procedural issue. As you know, there's our board, planning board, is also a board of architectural review. We also have a historical preservation reviewing committee in this village, both of which cover very similar ground. I've been lucky enough to speak. I know that the chair of that board is not speaking. I guess there's someone else from the board to speak tonight, but the chair of the HBC and I speak pretty regularly, and we often find where projects are coming before his board, spending a lot of time, and then they're adding time, they have to add another 4 weeks, 8 weeks potentially to come to our board for a review for something that's, we're really relying back on their review. And I know that there's land use law restrictions that make it a little bit harder, but I still think that there's some ways of improving that. And one example, and this has come up a few times, where the HBC has made minor tweaks to a project. Already in the existing kind of rules, there are minor architectural changes if the building inspector is reviewing a set of plans, someone's changing windows or making a minor change to a porch or kind of adding, moving a door over, and it's not really changing the overall appearance of the building. Where Joe can forward me the set of plans, and as the chair, I can sign off on those minor changes, acknowledging that they meet certain criteria. So, that's another way I think that certain HPC projects might be able to proceed again, just a little bit more quickly. So that's kind of where we are. And if you have any questions, I'm here.
Okay, there's always questions. I'm gonna start on this side. You're good. Manny?
Needs more time. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Sometimes I'm debating in which meeting to watch. Sometimes the zoning board is a little bit longer than the planning board, but I enjoyed watching those meetings almost every week. I may not be alive, but I usually go afterwards the next day or so. But it's very interesting you say that, because one of the things that when we were going over the form-based code, it was actually to improve a lot of the characters and a lot of the misses that we had. And one of the conditions that we put is pretty much for any project that goes in front or is trying to base their project in a form-based code, actually the final approval is us. It's like we have to approve that before we even moves forward to that. And my understanding is a pre-app meeting process in our village for any project. So it's a little bit of I want to try to put it as nice as I can of a challenge for me to understand that what is the disconnect more or less, and where's the disconnect? Is it the disconnect on the applicant, or is it the disconnect on the staff level that is still, because form-based code is a new thing. When I say new thing, a lot of municipalities don't really, even though they have applied that, it's very hard to understand. I don't want to say it's very confusing, but it's like reading a building code. So the interpretation sometimes it varies from whoever is reading that code. So it'd be very helpful for us to understand that a little bit better in what are the challenges itself. So maybe not now, but maybe in the future when you guys want to come in front of the board and kind of give a little bit more specific, you'd be like, okay, if you just tweak this a little bit, this will help the process. Because again, if the board feels that it's not an appropriate project because they have to come in front of us and we have to allow that to go through the next steps, then we need to know that. Meaning the board needs to know that. So I think that would be helpful. And the other one, because I was part of the HPC many years ago when we actually established some of the guidelines, when we actually became official as an HPC, and that was one of the things that we went through that process. So I'm glad to see that there are some conversations with the new chair now where minor tweaks could be just a sign-off, because that eliminates a lot of, I don't want to say waste of time, but it just becomes more productive, I believe, and more streamlined. And I think that's one of the processes that we always wanted to do here in the village. So, color, as you know, it's like sometimes on HPC, it's like color is irrelevant. We don't go by color. So that's one of the things sometimes that just as a comment for me when I watch the architectural review board meetings or the planning, is like when sometimes a conversation gets too geared for the siding color. We know, and and a lot of people know that in 2 years, if you don't like the siding, you're going to change it. You don't need a building permit for that. So sometimes I see that, some members, and I'm talking about in general, because I watch not just Austin, but true, I watch other municipalities too, where members get caught up on the color of the siding or the color of the trim. And sometimes that takes away from the character of the application. So that's just my 2 cents on the review. I think, the application process, and I'm glad that you looked into the parking and portion that we changed and modified, because that's something that I've been asking the board for years. And I think that would help alleviate some of the challenges that you had in some of the applications that I saw a couple of them last year. And yeah, in the middle of the pandemic too, would help a lot. So, but I'm glad that actually this board finally did that change and modified that, and it's helping you. So thank you for that. So I appreciate you coming over. So thank you.
This side?
Oh, yeah. So, thank you so much for coming for the presentation. I appreciate, oh, here we go. Thank you. I appreciate you, centering your comments on what the board has presented as priorities and how that has interacted with the planning board. My question is, moving forward, are there any kind of changes that you would be looking for the Board of Trustees to make in order to continue facilitating your work?
Yeah, I think right now, I can't think of one specific area. I think, parking was our biggest need for a long time. So I think that's been really checked. I think in an important way. I think we're always looking at the zoning, the zoning code, parking in general, kind of, different, what's been coming up recently. Again, there's recently that you guys dealt with the rezoning, a very localized rezoning. And I think that's gonna, as the way we live changes, the way we manufacture and make things and operate changes, I think, obviously constantly reevaluating how people are using their spaces, and that plays into our applications. That's not becoming a major issue right now, but certainly that's something that I see as being kind of an overtime place where we would want more guidance from you as a board. But right now, I don't think that there's anything urgent in that area.
Okay, that's helpful. And secondly, for me, I'm curious to hear any trends or patterns that you're noticing in the work. So one of the things that we've reflected on a lot was how the pandemic was changing a lot of the ways that folks were approaching these kinds of projects. And it's now been a few years since that most urgent of times. And so I'm curious to hear, what are you seeing now?
I mean, I think that the one big change, and I don't know if this is directly pandemic related, because this is long before the pandemic, I'd say, but it's certainly it's quite vivid in the projects that we're seeing, is the increase of residential space, which is great, that we love, but the shrinking of the commercial spaces, and developers really trying to minimize the amount of public space, publicly accessible places in their buildings. And that's something that we as a board have been trying to push back against. But that's been a very significant trend.
Thank you.
Thank you, Seth. Thank you for all your good work. What you guys do is extremely important and complicated. I don't think I could do it because there's a lot of details, a lot of checklists, but I'm glad that you're looking at ways to maybe take the redundancies out of HPC and Architectural Planning and Review Board, because they definitely exist. And I think it'd be frustrating for people. And then I wanted to say, just wait till you get the DRI projects coming to you. I haven't even started. The first one would be the multimodal, right? Probably, yeah. How close do you think some of your projects are to being ground being broken? Because I know it seems like they go on forever, right?
That's,
And a
yeah,
lot of them don't get built, right?
totally. That's, I
Right.
mean, that's, I think maybe, and I've been on this board since 2020. And there's always that moment where you drive by a site and you actually see shovels there. You're like, oh, wow, it's actually happening. There's actually one down on the in the parking lot at the train station, which we reviewed during the full-on shutdown of the pandemic. And I just had kind of given up that was maybe just never too bad, right? It looked like an interesting project. So yeah, I mean, like, honestly, when we talk about like trends and things, it's been this very slow build, and the number of then extensions, right? Site plan extensions, subdivision extensions, all of these things that we have to kind of like keep these projects, kind of above water until they are actually, whether it's to get financing or whatever the circumstances are. But that's definitely a real.
Well, hopefully you'll be driving around seeing more shovels in the ground. I'm certainly hoping so. So anyway, thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Seth, thanks you. I don't want to repeat what everybody said, although thank you for the work. It is actually, the land use are tough, and you have to take classes. People don't realize, sometimes think they don't realize it's volunteers and it's really their neighbors, but there's a reason for that, although you have the lawyers, etc. So I was just curious, when you look at this, when you look through decisioning, do you look mostly, or what percentage out of 100 do you look at the individual project and or how the community around it?
Yeah, it's really hard to separate. They're the same thing, right? So we are looking at the project from the perspective of the community. How is this, how is this going to impact the sidewalk in front? How is this going to impact, how people are parking on the street around it? Our hands are, we're working in parameters, right? We can't just say we don't like the project, or, we're worried that this is going to have, an impact on parking in the neighborhood that the code doesn't speak to. We can certainly make suggestions, and we do constantly. And I think a lot of developers are very amenable to that. They want to be good neighbors. But our perspective of, the 7 voting members on the board are just kind of different people in the community and trying to see what does this project look like in Ossining. And you certainly can't divorce it from the site, and each site's gives us different things to talk about, different issues. Obviously, when we have a secret review, or where we're looking at it kind of very, I think very kind of quantify the impact that project is having on the environment based on a matrix that the state has kind of required us to use. But and then that's a process where we're bringing in voices from literally voices from the neighborhood, right? Like that's my favorite part of our meetings is, it can be long, and sometimes it can be uncomfortable. But bringing in, when people from the community can come up and speak and talk to us, it's one of the things I really missed during the pandemic. Because it's just not the same when people are talking on a computer screen, versus when they're in there. And so that I think also just helps to force all of us, even though we may, some of us may live, 1.5 miles or 2 miles from that site and not know it so intimately. That community input really helps us to understand how it's impacting people's homes.
Great. No, I appreciate it. For me, as sort of an overview, the shift for me, even before the pandemic, as a mayor, is that the number one emails I would get is about taxation. Bar none. Then there was the second, third, fourth, it was like taxes and then the rest. It's now parking, that there's too much development, and it is affecting both the environment and it's affecting parking, because everybody, and even when you look on the internet, on-street, plenty of on-street parking, and people charge rent, but landlords don't actually, and developers don't own the streets, right? You know that. But the public doesn't really get that so much. And we did a lot of studies on the downtown. We didn't do a lot of studies on the residential neighborhoods where people live and try to come home. And it is, as the deputy mayor said, the pandemic has changed. People are going back to work, but not quite 5 days. So you got people working at home and their cars are now parked by their houses, which for like 100 years, people would commute or go to work during the day. You didn't see as many cars. So there's still a little bit of a change. So I'm curious as to you said you guys are going to start making some recommendations that you're looking at. And parking for me, I mean, we did a whole session on parking, that the municipality has now looked at all these folks who theoretically are in one family home, but somehow, it doesn't look like one family homes. And they're being approved for all these rooms that really are becoming more like boarding houses or multifamily. And people that live here know that. And the lawyers who come here for the meetings may not know that, but you guys all know that. It's my favorite thing about your boards and the rest of the boards is that there are people that live here. And I always say that they're like your neighbors. They live here, they drive the way we all do, and they see it. So people look and say, okay, there's 7 cars in front of a one-family home every single night. They have 1 car in their driveway. Their garage is used for storage, so they're not even using what's available to them. And the rest they park on the street. And there's only so many, and neither you or any other land use board, and as far as I know, can increase the linear footage of a given street. Linear footage is the linear footage, and the cars don't get smaller or bigger. So I'm just curious to look forward to your recommendation, because my role personally is always to look at the community. If you're going to pour cement in your entire front lawns so that you can rent your house out to other people, turn it into a business and pour concrete, you're affecting your neighbors, because their basement will probably flood next year because there's nothing to soak up naturally the water. So it's going to go into your next door neighbor down the hill, and we all live on hills. That's an example, real example, right? Of when we drive. Other people are very thoughtful. They might mistakenly increase their whatever, right? Or they may have room for a driveway, but they decided they'd rather put lawn furniture out there and have their kids park on the street, and they're taking up other people's space. I actually come at the world from a community that we live in a very, very populated community. I say this all the time, 3.2 square miles, almost 30,000 people. Poughkeepsie has 31,000 people. I mean, just as a perspective. So I'm not surprised that you're busy, because in upstate New York, they're not so busy. They're trying to get developers to come. They're trying to build housing. They're trying to build condos. We already have lots of them. It may never be enough for people, but we have lots of it. So I think you're going to be busier in 2024 and 2025 and 2026. So it's a roundabout way of saying thank you, because I think the zoning and planning are probably the two busiest. And Kate knows, and she'll be speaking, that I'm very big on the EAC, because what you do in a highly populated community is an environmental jigsaw puzzle, because everything affects your neighbors. It's not 20 acres and, you know, you could do whatever you want. And people think when they come to a project that it's just what they're allowed to do by right. I'm not confident in all of the lawyers, and I'm married to one. So, and I love my husband, that they come at it this way. They look at the code, but I am confident that you and your team and your committee, with the help of our municipal folks, can look and give this board suggestions on how to balance the world a little bit as we go over the next couple of years, from the environmental perspective, the overcrowding perspective, the opportunity for growth perspective, for more housing in some sections or in some buildings, and the opportunity to keep this a village and not a city, you know, that it has a historical look, which might differentiate it from White Plains or New Rochelle or the other cities that are building. I mean, I think Sleepy Hollow is built already at 46% increase in housing by the waterfront, and that's causing them growth pains. So every municipality is a little different, right? So I'm looking to you guys, and I know that the chairs are all here together to work together and help this board with, you know, strong recommendations, which we should be thinking about for the next 2 to 3 years, because you're at the ground level, right? And that's our role in this. So as soon as you get recommendations or you have thoughts, or you want to look at our meetings and the videos and say, okay, I get where they're going, or you believe it's time to open the comp plan and revisit whether it's form-based, which is a very controversial zoning. Mount Kisco, huge fight about it. Millwood, there were lots of, many, in fact, the majority, but I didn't want to go down into the politics, but
Yeah.
it is not well received by many municipalities, large and small. And I'm leaving the cities out. Okay, that's not, they're in a whole different category. So I'm counting on you guys this year to really help us. And lastly, that's sort of my ask.
Sure.
And now my other ask is there something specific coming out of this meeting? And I want the rest of you to think in the same terms immediately that you need this board to do for you. Is there a training course you see that you say, hey, I really think you should add that to the potpourri of things? Is it an issue with the attorneys that we have hired for your group to look at that you may be having issues with? Is it, the village? Nothing, it's fine. Everybody here is employed to make things better. Is there something specific that you need from us while we're meeting once a year like this?
Yeah, I mean, I put some thought into that. I think that at that level, there's nothing immediate. I think that
Okay.
we're working really well as a group. I think the staff that's assigned to our board, both from the village end and from the consultant end, is incredibly helpful, responsive. I can get them on the phone at any time. So it's been
Nice.
a really good experience.
Great. Well, we appreciate everything too. And please, to the whole committee, we appreciate your time.
Very good.
All right, we have,
That's one thing to that.
okay.
So, and just to add to a little bit too, it's on.
Thank you.
Yeah, it is. But thank you.
Move
Um,
closer, I think.
Could be.
Yeah.
So you probably have already parking for some zones throughout the village that we are making suggestions to and changing how to calculate the number of parking spaces. And that does not define the resident family commercial spots. So if you see something, because that was a suggestion that we put up and worked with our consultant planner to go back to you guys. So if it's something, and I want you to be as frank as possible with that suggestions, if you see something that makes no sense, because at the end of the day, for us, it's like making a drawing, sure. Everything makes sense in a piece of paper, a black and white, but sometimes the implementation that you guys have to take and the actions that you have to do may not pan out the way that we are thinking as a board. So I'll be asking you to look at that very carefully and be like, yeah, this makes sense, or this doesn't make sense, and these are our suggestions. The other portion of that is, as you know, we've been working on definitions and clarifications of our zoning code and, some of the stuff that you've been struggling, because I seen that in the meetings, because sometimes definitions aren't clear and very conflicted. So I'm asking you and the board to look into that and actually come up with suggestions for us to do the implementation, so it can help you and the zoning board and the environmental as well as the HPC to move forward with that in a better, cleaner manner in a way. So
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Seth. Now I would like to call our zoning board chair up to the table, Marlene Cheatham.
The podium just makes people nervous, I have to say. I've seen people,
Good evening, Mayor, and to the trustees and Deputy Mayor, good evening and greetings to all. Good evening to the village staff that is present tonight. I promise, try not to be before you too long. I do want to start by saying that as with all of the boards, I know that the village manager has been diligently looking for people, but if you're out there and think that you want to sit on any one of these boards, we would gladly take your resume. So again, send it to the village offices, because we do have 2 openings, I know, on the zoning board for alternates. We are at capacity for our regular members, but we're definitely always looking. So I do want to start with that, so you don't forget that part of it. I also wanted to come and just say that the zoning board kind of sits almost in tandem with the planning board. We kind of may look at things a little from 2 different angles, but and we're looking at the area and area variances and the use of the properties, and they always seem to, no one ever seems to be able to get them straight, or there are little things that we're always trying to fight against. I can tell you that as a board, we can sit through a meeting, and I'm sure, as Trustee Casada said, we've sat through meetings, and there may be 8 things on our agenda, and 5 of them are for little things to us because they're stairs and they're egress or the entrance and the exit of a building that we have no control over, that we almost have to approve because that's how you get in the building or get out of the building. So we've been, and I can say, if you're going to start with, some of the things that we would like to see changed, that is one of the areas we'd like to be able to put together like an administrative meeting or administrative group that can look at those little things and not have to bring them to the entire zoning board, because it's something that it's almost like we can't say no to, but we can approve them, on a continuing basis by just looking at them, seeing if there's anything outside of the ordinary, working together with the staff, and just, kind of saying, okay, this is something that we can move forward with. If there are small changes, like, a few feet, I know that there was some changes in the law that allowed for, minimal, yes, okay. But there are some issues where they kind of fall like a couple of feet outside of that, and then it has to come before the board, and it's like, okay, well, wait a minute, this is like 3 feet, like really, like you're coming to us for this. So I think that there are some things that and I've been saying this, that if we had a group that consisted of parts of the planning board, parts of the zoning board, parts of, some of the other zoning members, that if we sat down at least once a month, looked at some of the smaller projects or smaller things, and then just said as a group that we could go forward, or it would have to go to the bigger, to go to the full board. I think it would just eliminate some of the backlog. It would make things move a little faster, and I think that the public would be a little happier. So that's just my 2 cents. And they may not agree with me, but I just see that if we can get some things off of our table for our regular meetings, the meetings would, run a lot smoother. I know that, we're always talking, use variance versus area variance. And the mayor pointed out that people, part of what we have to look at is the character of the neighborhood. What is it doing? What does it look like? What are the neighbors saying? Where the zoning board, is that part of this process where we actually look at all that and we bring that into the factors and we talk about it. Will this change the character of the neighborhood? Will this, impede on the runoff or the amount of, water in the, so we take that into consideration very heavily, and we have to look at it in view of the factors that we have to decide at the end of the day. So it can be cumbersome, but then it can be very smooth. It can, there's always the 2 or 3 things. I think the biggest part of what people don't realize is when they're coming before the zoning board and it's a sign or a mural, which is a sign, that, it does cause us to have to look at it from different angles and think about it on the side of a building. How big is it? What does it look like? And if I have to drive by going on, any road, what does it do to the rest of the neighborhood? And we have to look at it in those lights. So yeah, it would be nice for you to paint, a rainbow on the side of a building, as big as All Outdoors. But then when we look at that, we have to say, if it's glitter and, and gold, what does it do to everybody else going past up and down? So we take that into account, and not everybody, walks away happy. And not everybody gets exactly what they want, but we do try to make, compromises where possible and ask for them to come back a few, we've had people that we've said, could you come back again? Can you come back again? Can you come back again? And some people hear us, and they get what we're saying, and they tweak what they have, and they come back in, and, we can come to a consensus, and then we can move on. And I think that that's the part of the land use boards that people miss, that we're not, it's not all or nothing, but if we can come to something, then, we can work with you within the law.
Thank you, Marlene. I'm going to start here again.
Of course. Well, being previously sitting on a zoning board, I know exactly what you're talking about with the little things that come in front of you. And you look across the table and like, you want to say, I'm sorry, we had to bring you in here for this. I get it. The administrative part that we did change helps. But I think what would help us is if you gave us some bullet points and a couple ideas of what you're looking to, like limitations of how far you want to go with an administrative approval, and not have to drag these people in front of you, this month, and then, oh, well, the paperwork's not right now, not next month. Right?
Right.
It goes on. So thank you for coming here. I totally understand that part. Let's streamline this as best we
Okay.
can. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Mark. Companies to continue. Yeah, I appreciate that. So I want to piggyback on that, because some of the challenges that I see on the zoning board is not something that is new, but it's actually something that they've been built. And part of that is the challenge that they'll have to come in front of us because they are not.
Trustee Casada, is your microphone on? I'm sorry.
Sorry about that. Now it was not on.
Okay,
Should've
thank
told me.
you.
See, now you felt to tell me. Right. Yeah, to me, it sounds the same, but thanks. But I think that's the challenge. The challenge is some of the, like, a staircase that they're redoing because it's actually under violation, property maintenance portions of that, they're falling apart, so they need to rebuild that. But they need to come in front of us before sometimes it goes in front of you guys. And sometimes it's like, it's difficult to delineate some of the stuff that has been there for many years. So I think some of that stuff, I think is Stuart has been helping. So maybe, and I know the building inspector has some challenges in there because it isn't that we added to the code that he has the minimums up
Right.
to 10%. So I'm not sure if you're saying this, but maybe we should be looking at maybe at 15%, maybe.
And I don't know
some
if it's-
guidelines into that, and what does that mean? And maybe Stuart can help out in some of the stuff that is if it's a stair, if it's something in the village right away that is needed to get access to their homes.
So
May
that,
not have to come for us. It may be maybe just administrative portion that.
right,
will
so,
be
and
helpful.
I get it if it was a new build or something that was being built, newly, new structure, and they, decided to do something bigger, grander, better, that's a different story. But if you know that they're repairing stairs, or the front porch is falling down, or the back porch is falling down, and they have to redo it, it's within the same footprint. But again, Ossining was not built with, the large acreage of land. Everything is on small lots, so they're already outside of the zoning code to
Correct.
start with. Like,
Yeah.
and, so, like, they're going to be they're not within the lot line, they're already outside, they're already too big, and it was the existing stair. So you're not making it any bigger, you're not making it any wider, you're doing it in the same footprint, but it does not fit within the code. So,
Correct.
and I know that they said, like, there's a 10% that kind of, they're able to do, but when it falls outside of that, it may be 11%, it may be 12%,
Mhm.
It's just that little bit more.
Yeah.
But we know that if it's really is their entrance or exit from their house, there's nothing we're going to be able to say except, so I think that those are the ones that really make it hard. It's time. That I think it's time for not only the homeowner, but it's time for the zoning board members as well, that, I think if there's a way to cut that, I think it would make it so much easier and I think it makes it user friendly.
And I agree with you. The other part that I'm gonna agree with you, and that you and I had this conversation in the past, and I have brought this up to this board for many years as well, which is called the Residential Project Review Committee, which is in is in Northcastle? Yeah, Northcastle.
Castle.
And one of the consultants is our consultant that is part of that, and is actually Intel's, the planning board, zoning board, and a couple other members on staff. And they do meet, I think, maybe twice a month to review projects and try to streamline a lot of the stuff. Like if you add in 2 windows on the HPC, as part of the review, I think you mentioned that sometimes there are minimus items that they add and you just do a sign off, which is exactly what this board does. Because sometimes some of the stuff is very complex, because some of the items, the planning board is waiting for the zoning board
Right, and then the
to
zone.
approve.
Right.
Or sometimes the planning board, as you mentioned, is waiting for HPC, which is also waiting for the zoning. But these items are so small, that having this board or this committee, it will actually expedite that stuff, and it will minimize the 2.5 hours sometimes meeting that you guys have.
Or the 15-minute meeting that, just because they're at the end, they have to come back to, just because their application needs to be
Correct.
renewed. Like, okay, you have and
So-
all 3 of the boards have to renew the application
Right.
because it's at the end of the
So
year.
I'm gonna say this again to the board and to staff. I would like this to be looked into, because it's not just one chair now that had mentioned something along those lines. It's now 2 chairs that sort of mentioned something like this. So I'm asking the board and I'm asking staff to really look into a concept that actually will help expedite this. So, but thank you, Maureen.
Hey,
How are you?
okay, how are you?
It's interesting you mentioned murals, my favorite topic. And do you get a lot of requests for people to paint murals on their houses or buildings?
We've had a few. Not
And
many,
Is it
but
mostly in private residences or?
no, more the business.
Oh,
It's all
really?
Business, yeah.
And What usually happens, I haven't seen any murals popping up on any business. Oh, no, the Here Coffee and Beer. Was that
Yes,
one
that
that
was
you were thinking of? Yeah.
And then we've had people who have come by and said, this just on the off chance that they'd like to, put a mural on the side of a building. And it's like, and I had to say that you need to get a permit to do
Permit.
that. And they tell me no. And I said, call the village office. That's what I tell them.
Now, is this private residences too, or just public, just
I-
commercial buildings?
I believe it's all.
It's all, okay. So if I wanted to paint a mural on my barn,
in
I
your
would have to,
in your backyard.
yeah.
I don't,
I don't think so.
No?
not on your, in your,
Oh, okay.
No, because it's like you painting your house.
Right.
right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about it,
I
actually, but
think, okay. So
no, it's
commercial is considered.
purely harmless. Okay, thank you.
So I'm not going to repeat what I said before because I think it goes against all of you. But what's different about you, Marlene, and the public may or may not know is you've had a long history of volunteer work in our community. No, not too long, never too long. You're a role model, aside from the fact that I think you were mayor for a bit and held many positions. The reason I bring that up is that I'm sort of curious with all these years, what big change you've seen in zoning planning, more construction, less construction, more changes in private homes, more in the commercial, a change, like what do you see as like a trend? I don't know if it surprises you or not, but that you could share with us. It says, the biggest thing, the biggest change we've had is X.
I don't know if I would say the biggest change we've had. I think the thing that always makes me pause is we do have construction that has always been in the pipeline. I mean, I can think of a few that, we're going to get that shovel and we're going to get out of there and we're going to start this project. And then 10 years later, there's nothing. 15
Mhm.
years later, there's nothing. There's a tarp on the building and nothing has happened. The grounds look horrible. Those kind of things have happened. And then there's the construction that comes along and, there's this little kind of entity that, just says, I want to do something over on the corner of
Mhm.
X and Y, and the next thing you know, it's built. So looking at, big versus little, looking at, people who are really ready and shovel ready, say they're shovel ready and get out there and do a job, always makes us know that, yes, things can move forward and we're not the holdup. We're not, I think people always, and I say this, blame the zoning boards or the boards for why things aren't done. But I think it's more of whether they're really ready to do a job and ready to get things, moving forward. And I don't always believe every person that walks in the door is ready for that, but they want to say that they are. And at the end of the day, sitting where you sit or sitting on any of the boards, we don't know that.
Mhm.
We don't know where they're, like you can ask financially if they're ready, you can ask if they're ready to go and they're going to tell you yes. And then at the end of the day, nothing happens.
Got it. And you don't think that's a big change, but that's just because we have so much going on. It
Yes.
seems like that.
Yeah.
Great.
Um,
Well, thank you. Always nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Nice to see everybody.
4 State Street.
I wasn't going to mention.
Thank you so much,
that's-
Marlene. Next, we have a member of, from our HPC. I'd like to introduce Mark Gospel, who is standing in tonight for the chair, but I'm sure will do an equally good job. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's good. It's good to be here. And,
Welcome.
I'm, happy to stand in for Chair Garbowit. He's actually, I think, doing some firefighter training because he's a volunteer. So your recruiting is working. So we need him on the board for HBC. So you were close on the pronunciation. It's Mark Gospel. Thank you. So So it's okay. I've been called worse, so, but. you know,
I,
nobody would
I
know-
tried.
No
I-
one would
I
know from reading
apologize.
it. It's not intuitive, so thank you. So I can give a quick update on what we've been doing over the course of the year on the Historic Preservation Commission. One of the things we've been working on is we've been working on updates to our historic structures guide. Previously that had been published in 2010. I think that was very helpful for a lot of people coming in front of the board, seeing what's considered important in Austining. So we realized that it's important to keep that up to date because, you know, things change and grow. So we implemented some revisions to that. And so we're just always trying to keep it as a live document as other things change and come along. The other thing that we're working on as a living document is the HPC guidelines. We think those are very helpful. You know, it's history. A lot of people think they know what it is, but they don't. Really. It's not just making the building look old, you know, because it is old. There's a lot more nuance to it, in keeping the character of the village of Austining. So, keeping those guidelines up to date. You know, thinking about things like putting photovoltaics on a roof. You know, how do you do that? We don't want to discourage that. You know, that's a great thing. And so we want to help to encourage that in the historic district to be done in a sensitive manner, similar to possibly having to add, say, an ADA accessible ramp. Buildings need to be accessible. They need to be, equally used by all members of the public. So we want to be sympathetic in ways and try to provide some guidelines so that when an applicant shows up, they're better prepared for approval. So those are some of the things we're working on there. Additionally, we're trying to recruit new members. We only have 6 right now and no alternates. I think our board officially has 7. So we do have a couple new members this year, which is great. This is only my 2nd year, so I'm still pretty new as well. I'm glad to be helping out. And then the last thing is we've asked for some data, some analytics on the website, seeing what kind of hits we're getting, who's looking at the HPC, committee and what goes on with HPC, and just see if what that tells us about who's seeing us and how we do or don't want to be seen more. And that's pretty much everything we've done. In addition to just reviewing the applicants coming from us. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'm going to
Sure.
start to my
Thank you.
right to see if there are, I'm sorry, were you saying more? Oh. Dana, would you like to start us off?
I sat on the HPC for a couple years
Okay.
and enjoyed it tremendously. Probably the most challenging aspect of the Historical Preservation Commission is attempting to landmark things. Have you tried that? Have you guys tried any landmarking lately?
Not since I've been on the board, not
Yeah.
yet. Yeah.
We, that is, a lot of people, you want to preserve, I could give some examples, but you want to preserve these structures, but if they're part of, let's say, a community or a condo complex or something, and they don't want the onus of having to meet the guidelines of the Historical Preservation Committee. So it's hard, right? I remember there was an attempt to, create a historical district on Ellis Place that got a lot of pushback as well, but that was well before your time. So it's this difficulty of encouraging people to preserve and restore their homes or to make any changes in a sensitive manner. But on the other hand, it's more expensive and a lot of people don't want to go to the trouble. And they feel it's an intrusion on their property rights. So it's, it's hard. There's a building I want to talk to you about afterwards. I won't say, but that I think it may be right for landmarking. This might be a good time. But, there are structures that we would really hate to see demolished. We've seen what happens, like at 34 State Street, where, this historic building gets caught in limbo. And it's very difficult to protect it. And it's very frustrating, right? So thank you for your work. I know that you've been talking to Seth about some redundancies with what the Architectural Review Board also requires, and that people can, so that's a good conversation to have. You're an architect as well, right?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Mhm.
So that's good. I am not, but thank you. I believe in the HPC. I think it definitely has an important role here. And I congratulate you on your work. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Gentlemen? Okay.
Make sure my mic is on. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate
You're
that. You know, I don't, watching the meetings, from HBC, as I mentioned, for architectural group or just the landlord, just the meetings itself is just, very interesting sometimes, even though I live in a community, sometimes I see projects that, it's like there has a, even though I may not be in that neighborhood, but I know that I drive by there or walk by there, it's very impacted, and conserving the history of that, I think is essential. So I thank you for all that stuff that you're doing, and it's very encouraging that you guys are looking into as a life document, because that was the goal many, many years ago, to keep that going. And I think, I don't want to say I was one of the first members, but I was the first member when the HBC came official. So I'm proud of that portion of that. And unfortunately, a lot of the founding members are not in Austin anymore. But that doesn't mean that their hard work stay there. So I'm happy to see that it's actually has continued that. And you guys, I'm hoping you guys have a good foundation to keep building into that. I think the challenge that you guys are having is that, more of how do you implement something like a solar panel? Because I know a lot of, this literally just two districts that you encounter.
Yeah.
Sparta and sort of the downtown itself.
That's it.
So I'm not sure how many solar panels are in Sparta. I haven't seen at least the areas.
We had one applicant come through this year.
Yeah. So that's,
Mhm.
and I haven't seen anything the last year or anything like that, but I know it could be difficult. You should encourage the Tesla shingles. They look beautiful. They're incorporated. I know how expensive they are, but they definitely will go well with that traditional feel.
Mhm.
I think what the portion that I think I would like you guys to look into it is a little bit more of what Dana was talking about before, into what's going to happen, where the next 2 years, more or less, maybe 4 years, maybe less, the downtown is going to look like. So I know this is a portion that, even though it's not part of the landmark district, is definitely, it's close enough. Literally, it's going to be across the street. So the implementation of what that looks like. So I'm encouraging the board to keep an eye on what is going to come up from this end in the presentation of the architects at some point of time, what Market Square is going to look like. Because I think that corner is going to be a very focal point in the perspective for HPC and how that town feels. So I'm encouraged for you guys to look into that and at some point give us some feedback or work with the architect at some point, just give us some pointers of what that looks like. Well, that's concept, but I think it will be essential for you guys to be involved in our process. And I have always said that. And there's language in our code right now that talks about that communication between that and so the other thing that I always remember, and we have that in architectural guidelines. It's funny you say that because I know we're talking about, how many people that actually follow the architectural guidelines. Not that many people know about the architectural guidelines.
Right.
But part of the architectural guidelines is actually signage. And that's something that on the board, we have talked about, in the HPC board, they have talked about signage and blaze signs. And I think one of the suggestions that I had a long time ago was pretty much to get that section out of the architectural guidelines and make its own flyer, make its own portional part of the application. Because I know there's some guidelines in there from storefronts to blaze signs to signs. And I think that will help you guys to streamline a lot of the signs. Because at some point in time, you had a very well application of just signs. Not this year, but I think about a year and a half ago, maybe before you time, that they had a lot of signs going on downtown. They know the areas of Austin where you guys were in charge of that. So I think that will be helpful for the community to see and for you guys to actually give some input into that. So, but thank you for all the work that you guys did.
You're welcome.
Welcome again. Thank you for the presentation. I think everybody said what needs to be said. I think that I look at you guys as part of the groups that keep the village looking special, looking like a river town. That's what differentiates river towns from other parts of Westchester. not just ours, there are many river towns, and having that sort of character and keeping your eyes on it and make sure people know that there's a historic district actually,
Mhm.
and how we could be more helpful in that. And the same goes to you when you go back to your committee. If there's something the board needs to do, let us know.
Okay.
You know, that's
Yeah,
what
I'll
we're
talk
here for. Yeah,
Chair Garbowit, and we'll definitely get back to you.
that's
Yeah.
great.
Mhm.
Thank you so much for being here tonight.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gosall. Next, I would like to introduce Kate Schlott, who is the Chair of our Environmental Advisory Council. Welcome, Kate.
They'll be very proud of me. I got heat panels installed, the heat pumps, and
Oh.
looking into getting the solar panels on my house. So it was very interesting that that conversation actually just came up.
That's
Um,
great.
So I'm just going to go through an overview of what the role of the EAC is, what we did in 2023, and what we have lined up to continue into 2024. So the role of the EAC is to advise the Board of Trustees on matters affecting the preservation, development, and use of the natural and man-made features of the conditions of the village, conduct studies and surveys and inventories of the village's natural and man-made features, maintain an up-to-date inventory of all open spaces with the village, maintain communications with public and private agencies whose activities have an impact on the quality of the environment, such as other duties as may be assigned by the Board of Trustees. Something else that we also do is that we look over the local waterfront revitalization program. So we review some of the sites and provide assessments for that. And we're also designated as an interested agency for the SECRA reviews. So in the past year, the EAC has attended a number of training webinars and lecture series events throughout 2023. So these events actually have helped us with training necessary to perform many of the duties that have been set out in our E-code. In an effort to prepare to conduct a natural resource and open space inventory for the village, which has been an ongoing discussion since 2023, the EAC members have attended webinars and lecture series provided by the Hudson River Watershed Alliance, as well as the Department of Environmental Conservation that focused on the scope and training necessary to conduct an NRI and open space inventory. And these webinars focused on the importance and benefits of an NRI, the steps to actually conduct one, particularly for an urban setting such as what we have in Ossining. We also went over geographic information systems tools that would be useful in conducting an NRI and the importance of community partnerships in order to get one going, especially with communities around us as well. In the past couple of years, it's been recognized that our local tree ordinance requires some updating. So to achieve this, EAC members attended the lecture Health and Sustainability of Trees at Teatown Lake Reservation last year, which focused on the impacts of trees on the climate, overall value trees provide, the importance of improving local tree ordinances, and the problems with invasive tree species and diseases. In the last few months, we've begun the process of updating the tree ordinance and have provided input toward achieving that goal. I also attended the Hudson River Watershed Alliance Conference in October of 2023, which focused on the theme diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice. And at this conference, issues addressed included environmental justice and the climate crisis, community engagement strategies, environmental and climate justice community change, and the impacts of coastal flooding, PCBs and heavy metals, and PFAS contamination in the Hudson River watershed, which directly impacts us as a coastal community of the Hudson River. So this conference was important to highlight the range of environmental issues Ossining faces as a coastal community. Back in April of 2023, the EAC also used the Earth Day Festival as an opportunity to collect concerns from the Ossining community regarding environmental issues. Members of the community expressed concerns about invasive species, tree coverage, and pollution in the river. So in 2024, we're working on an education campaign for the public regarding invasive species and working on mitigation strategies to control invasive species spread throughout the village. In 2024, we will be putting together significant tree lists for the village, and we will start by walking the community in the coming weeks to create a preliminary list that will then be open to the public for input and their concerns. We will also be keeping an eye out for technical assistance grant opportunities from the DEC to conduct a full natural resource and open space inventory that will most likely take place between 2024 and 2025. And this weekend, members of the EAC will be attending the more environmental training for the Climate Reality Leadership Core training that's coming up this weekend at the Jacob Javits Center. And from there, what we really could use at this point, I second what the zoning board was mentioning and the historical review board, that we could use more volunteer help. So if there's anybody out there who wants to join the EAC, we would be very happy to have you. I think at this point, we now have 3 open full-time slots and 2 alternate slots that we might need to fill, I believe, at this point. And to get some of the public education training, the EAC would like funds to continue attending the webinars and conferences. Most of the time they are free, and we try to keep it so that we are attending the free ones, but every so often we do have to pay for an occasional training session here and there, and also so that we could obtain educational materials for the community. So when we have things like the Village Fair or Earth Day, we can actually do demonstrations for the public, for the kids, to show how their environment around them is impacted by what they do and how they're connected to other communities up and down the Hudson River. So,
Great. How much money do you need?
At this point, I would say probably 2,000 to cover materials, the cost, the conferences. We never ordered that thing. That's also why I wanted the money. I wanted to get an Enviroscape. Actually, T-Town had loaned us one during the Village Fair last year, which was amazing. The kids loved it. Lots of people in the community showed a lot of interest, and it really was really cool to show them how sediment, runoff, all of that impacts their houses, their lawns, the things that they're doing, the stuff they're putting into their driveways, all of that, how it impacts people downstream, how it impacts their local water supply and the fish and the ecosystems. And it really, the community really thought it was cool.
Did you put a budget for your committee
I
for
don't
the?
think we put a budget in for this year, but
No, so I
No.
think good evening. I think what we did this year for all of the land use boards was assign, I want to say it was $1,000 per member per year, which to the chair's point, most of the members are using WUMF training, free training.
Right.
I know that we had talked about the tabletop. I see Dale's, eyeballs kind of rolling around. Basically this very cool tabletop thing, which we took a look at and Kate made a recommendation. I think the total came to like $1,800.
was it?
Well, that was like with the carrying case.
Oh, yeah,
on
yeah,
the
which we
side.
didn't need to do the carrying case. It actually comes with a really good cardboard box that you could store it in. Without the carrying case, I
Yeah.
think it was like 1,200.
Yeah, so we can certainly find room,
You'll
from the
find the
training
money?
budget.
Yeah. Yeah, and the kids, people from the local schools, lots of other people from environmental committees around the area, when they saw it, and it was really impactful. People.
Right, so
saw
if we did 1,000 per person, that's like a lot of people, right? We couldn't have done 1,000 per person, must be 1,000 per committee we did. It can't be, we have about almost 100 people on all the committees combined. So you're gonna look it up. All right, you still have about 30 or 40. So Dale, you're gonna look at this and maybe see where there's some money with Maddie and figure it out, because they all use different amounts and a lot of the programs are free. I mean, they're free. The municipality, it's done by government. I mean, that's part of what taxes
And
go
most
to.
of the conferences that have attended, again, have been free, and the ones that did cost something were pretty low in cost, but if multiple people wanted to go,
Right, there's
it adds
transportation
up.
and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so is this something you need like for April 20th for the
No,
Earth Day?
no.
Oh.
Actually, I'm not going to be here for Earth Day, which I'm very sad to miss.
Okay.
But definitely for after. And I've been talking with other environmental organizations around the area, the nonprofits. I've spoken with Riverkeeper a couple of times.
Okay.
Green Oceaning. So things, there's a lot of support around the community as well to help get a lot of these projects off the ground and contributions that would be made.
Great. So I'm sure there are some questions. Dana, I'll start with you again.
Well, I have the pleasure and honor of being the board liaison to the EAC, and watching Kate in action. I think for me, kind of set the standard for chairs.
Oh, thank you.
Smart, you're thorough, you're nice. And
So
And
it's
you're
well,
really
there's
good at,
that.
you actually do something in this area for a living, right?
I teach at Pace. I'm in the
Yeah,
environmental studies and
yeah.
science department there, and I'm a trained geographer, which is why
Right.
I'm missing Earth Days. I'm going to a
Right.
geography
We talked
conference.
about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about the tree survey. I'm convinced I have some significant trees in my yard, but you know.
Okay.
But I think it's, you know, we need to raise awareness about trees because I think people don't take them seriously enough sometimes and just cut them down willy-nilly, and you actually, you know, can't just do that. And that trees matter and are important, and they're the lungs of the planet, and we have to preserve as many trees as we can and maybe replant when we can't, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
Okay.
It's been a struggle with some of the utility companies because when they come in and
Uh.
they start clear cutting on some of the tree canopy, it's like, "Oh, why would you do it that way?
We work on my street, and they did a much more sensitive job this time. I don't know. Somebody
Maybe
talked to
maybe
them,
they're
or-
getting better.
I don't know, but
The municipal contractors that work for the village, we have developed a way to make sure that we're hiring sensitive, no pollarding or lollipopping. I can't, don't have as much control over the utility
Yeah.
companies, unfortunately.
There's one tree on Ann Street. Every time I drive past it, I'm just like, oh God, why?
Do you have anything? Bob, anything? Manny?
Thank you. You know, one of the things that I always think about Austin.
Sorry to interrupt you, trustee Casada. Can you put your microphone on?
It is on.
Oh, sorry, I
I think
apologize.
you just need to speak more loudly, that's all.
So is that better, Jamie?
Yes, thank you.
So, no, thank you, because it's very helpful to actually see, Austin is actually one of the few communities that actually has some tree ordinance and regulations, because I see other municipalities that have to go through their website to look at what they do, and actually it's not that, you know, and it's actually a shame that a lot of the stuff is happening, you know, there's no control of that, so I appreciate all the input that you have done for that. So I want to thank you, for all the hard work that you do, because I know it's very important, not just, you know, it's not just the buildings, you know, sometimes it's not just the houses, but I think it's the environmental portion, especially in big developments, you know, having that feedback from your board to the architectural review board, the planning board, I think is essential. So thank you for all the hard work. But I'm going to disagree with Dana. You know, you're a great chair, but I think all our boards are really good chairs as well. So you said that you stick around, so thank you for all the hard work.
And it's my pleasure. Thank you.
So, you know, EAC, I was on it. I love it. You and I met, I mean, through that. We'll talk a little bit more because I know you're going, to this event, and we just talked before the meeting started of maybe when you speak that we get that on recorded and maybe share, because education, as you and I have agreed,
Yeah.
is a big part. We do get, like much of Westchester, people moving in from cities, mostly New York, where trees are not a topic. They should be. I'm not saying they're not, but you know, there's a lot of focus on the parks like Central Park and Brooklyn and the Bronx, but you know, individuals living in apartments, just they're not aware, and unless they grew up in the suburbs or in the country, they may not know. So education is a big deal. I would like to recommend that you connect, if you haven't already, with the youth advisory, the bureau, and council. Those kids are very interested in the environment. Topics like trees don't necessarily come naturally. Litter might be something that they see more, but you understand the trees are the lungs of the planet is not always something that they get. Also, I spoke to Vinny at Ossining Lawnmower because I knew it was on the agenda. You know, they got a lot of landscapers. If we can hand something out there, again, who knows, maybe only 10 of the landscapers will look, but many people go to their landscapers and go, oh, you know, my tree fell down, or what should I replace it with? They'll say whatever, or they'll say, oh, you know what, here's a list, or you really should be putting this because it's better. And even if you change 10 landscapers, that's huge, right? You don't have to do all 500 of them, but
Especially
it's
because a
huge.
lot of them do multiple properties around. the
Exactly.
Community.
You know, it's like one brick at a time builds a building. So appreciate everything. Go back, I guess, to the committee. I forgot that when we advertise, I know Jamie's on here. you know, people who sit on EAC who used to sit, you only have to get off for a year. You can come back. I think next time we publicize, we should mention to people that they can come back to the committee. Once they're off for a year, they can come back if they're available. And I'm not sure that's clear to people actually with the rules that we instituted a few years
Well,
ago.
I know some of the loss of members we had really had more of them moving out of the
They
village
moved out.
than, than anything else.
Yes, I know we've had that on a number of committees, and there used to be committee members who sat around for 30 years. I mean, we've changed some of the rules for a reason, which is that more people should be involved, not the same 2 people or 3 people. And actually, I think it works really well. But every once in a while, you know, there's always people moving, you know, that's normal. So thank you. Have a good conference.
I
I'm sure
will
it'll be
see if I can send the link so you could watch it live. It's a
Right.
6-hour time difference, but so it'll be happening in like the late afternoon.
Right.
And if it's not a hybrid session that's recorded, I'll record it on my phone and we'll send it over.
That'll be wonderful. Thank you.
I
you
just
s-
wanted
you,
to
Kate.
add, sorry.
Yes.
Go ahead.
$200 per member per year, up to 9 members for each board.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
okay.
interesting.
So it's not $1,000 per member, but it's 200 times 9 for each board.
Okay, well, that makes sense. Dale will find something somewhere.
I don't think they'll have a problem finding, the funds.
What it was.
Thank you, Kate. I can think of a lot of uses too. We'll
No,
get a
he
lot
was
of
great.
uses out of the tabletop.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So that concludes our presentations from our land use boards, and I'd like to now turn this over to our treasurer, Dale Brennan. I think we'll have a slight, just little change in order. Dale has 2 agenda items tonight, but before she does the 2023 budget adjustments, since we have Captains, Chief Zimmerman and Sergeant McGovern here to talk about Light Path, I want to invite them. You're welcome to come up to the table, gentlemen.
You want to switch it around?
Yeah, just, you know, so we'll talk about Light Path. If you recall, we had talked about this a few meetings ago, and the board had some questions about Light Path, which is part of the equipment that needs to be installed in conjunction with the radios. So with that, I will turn it over to Treasurer Brennan and our police department.
Is that on?
Chief, you can grab the mic and come over there too. We're gonna need something now that you
Now that
said
you're
that.
Thank you, Manager DeTore. Good evening, Mayor and Village Board. And I thank the Police Chief and Sergeant McGovern for attending this evening, as well as the team effort on this memo. If I could read that first, and then if there's any follow-up questions, because these gentlemen will have more of the granular detail. I was really just the landscape artist for the memo.
You did a great job.
Thank you. I appreciate that. As a follow-up to the village board's additional questions in regards to Light Path contract presented for the police department and radio transmission, we have compiled the following additional information. The current radio system utilized by the police department's 2 antennas is analog, which is old technology. And the cost to upgrade to radio frequency bandwidth technology would be about $1.5 million. And with all the necessary permits and agencies for approval, the process to upgrade would take about a year, maybe more. The MTA trunking system option allows the village to have a direct connection and our own channels, 2 regular and 1 encrypted, utilizing the 3 points of contact, which are the 3 different addresses listed on the current Light Path contract, to build our own direct network. The system currently has adequate radio signal in the area and also has a cellular backup if an officer finds themselves in an area with inadequate radio coverage. Also, in the event of a catastrophe, having this direct connection enables the police department to be able to continue to communicate if the radio towers go down. Currently, Pleasantville, Yorktown, Portchester, Rybrook, and Harrison have also gone this route of becoming members of the MTA trunking system. In terms of the cost, the $1,500 a month charge is not currently in the 2024 operating budget, but there is sufficient funds in the capital project to cover costs, which were the June to December, so about $10,000. And the annual cost of $18,000 would be included in the 2025 operating budget. And the contract terms, because I know that was a question also that the board had, have now been reduced from 5 years to 3 years. This solution saves us, in essence, $191,000 annually for debt service if we were to borrow the $1.5 million and build our own antennas. So in that, I will ask if there's any further questions.
Anybody? Okay. This side? Okay. So I think the reason there were questions is because most of us couldn't remember when this was ever presented. It was like, we got it like a blank stare. We all looked at each other. So this is great because at least it gives information. What it doesn't do for me is, so now at least we know, and the chief and I have spoken about what it is. And I didn't even know anybody used analog anymore, so that's a little scary. But it doesn't, at some point, we're gonna have to say, do we want to do $1.5 million and invest, and what's the pros and cons, or do we want to continue with this format, and what's the pros and cons? So I assume there was a request, the board didn't request that we shorten from a 5-year to a 3-year contract. But somebody decided to do that, I assume, just to give us some time to see if this works and
right.
get out of it, I guess.
Mhm.
And so we now know the costs.
Mhm.
I would ask, I don't know if anything else was ever studied. I just sort of know that it's this versus us doing it ourselves. Has anybody looked into, because I'm not sure any who actually worked on this project. Did you work on this project, Sergeant?
A little before my time. I was told make it work after I came in. I will say after consulting, there would be a $500 cost associated continuing a month going forward. So it wouldn't be the $18,000 per year. It would be $6,000 per year, even if we had our own system. So that'd be, and this is about the 1.5 rate, going with that. And going forward, the good part about going with the MTA system is we have the hardware now. We have the radios, we have our parts of the infrastructure for the police department. It would be the equivalent. We could continue to run that while building our own network down the line and put up our own towers. It gives us options in going with this. We're not locked in.
Well, you locked in, I think, for short, 3 years is like, you know, in the world of what we're, municipal is like nothing. That just gives you time to look at things and to take a breather. Okay, so we're comparing build your own or go with this. There doesn't seem to be a third option of some company doing it. At least somewhere you, and it doesn't, how long have you been here?
Oh, it was.
I mean,
before my
you're-
time.
well-
We've had these same radios. I've been here, 13 years.
Right, that's what I thought. I
As far
thought
as the
15
project
years.
is concerned, it was before Pat was in his
Oh,
position that he is
okay.
now.
Before I was-
But
okay.
actually, the radios that we're currently using were discontinued in 1999.
Okay.
We've been limping along.
So the equipment, which is universal, no matter what we went with, if we went with a rebuild of a local system here, or we get on board with the MTA and use their trunking system, the equipment is universal.
Okay.
The radios, the consoles, the car radios, the portables, everything. The hardware is universal, which, you know, we can use those radios currently with the system we have on that analog system, but it's not that great. With the MTA trunking system, it gives us a digital system that's secure and is our own system, kind of using their infrastructure to support our own system. So
You get a lane within their highway, right?
correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I would expect in 2 years that we see somebody sitting here and saying to us, here are the three options.
Yeah.
We build, here's the cost for the next 20 years. We sublease from some ABC company that does this for others and other municipalities, and here's the pros and cons. And nothing's ever 3 years because we don't do things for 3 years. We got to look at 10 years, 15, I mean, and enough time to put into a budget, not, so 2 years from now, or hey, MTA's good. It's better than A and B, and we like it and it works and it's probably the best, and the board then will decide, maybe 5 years, then it's just a discussion about time, right? Time and money.
Right.
Nobody had comments, but I don't know if anybody changed their mind. That's more questions since I asked these questions. Do you have some questions?
Just
I saw some movement.
where are we at with time frame? And are we implementing material?
Yeah, well, we have all the radios, you have all the hardware. It's ready to be installed. All we're really waiting for is the go ahead to move forward with the installation of the fiber line. And then once that's done, we're up and running.
I believe, Bob, that this all came up because we asked to sign off on something and we all looked at each other and went, what do we sign?
Yeah, I think.
I mean, there was,
Mhm.
I think they were ready. No, it was, I think they were ready for a signature, right? So
Yeah,
we just have to say
I
whether
think,
we're
you know-
willing to sign this now or not. It's really the only thing left for us to do.
I know
Mhm.
that Sergeant McGovern, we were both kind of like dropped into this,
Understood.
into this bowl of soup, so to speak, and I guess the reason why the funding, and we spoke about this, was not included in the capital project, it's because it's a reoccurring cost on a
Mhm.
one-time shot. And I think there was a little drop the ball and a little bit of communication, before we got to this point where this probably should have been brought up
Yeah.
towards the end of 2023 when all this was going on, and it kind of slipped through the cracks, and then we realized, oh, wait, we need to do this, and then it was brought up, and that much time had passed where it was like, what is this?
Right. Oh, no, understood. And now I think we've gotten clarification.
yeah.
So, I'm fine with going forward as we were asked, whenever we were asked. Now we understand what we're actually signing. Are people here are good? People.
Yeah, no,
Oh, you have
thank you.
more?
Yeah, just have one question, I
Sure.
guess, in regards to that. So since that, and thank you for coming back into this, and Dale, thank you for putting this memo together. So maintenance wise, what happens in a year and a half, something happens to those lines, who's responsible for that? Are we responsible for that, or the MTA is responsible if something happens to these lines that we're gonna be installing?
The light path, that's through Optima.
No, I understand that, but what happens if something happens? Who pays for that?
That's Optima.
So it's not on us. So
We're paying that
maintenance-wise,
500
yeah.
per line.
So that
for them
includes
to
all that stuff.
Keep the integrity of that line.
Okay, so it's like if
Mhm.
I'm home and I'm paying Verizon is responsible to maintaining the internet connection to my house.
Yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
so that's what I want to make sure that it's clear, because even though we're paying in maintenance, that part of the maintenance,
Mhm.
part of the bill pays all that maintenance as well.
Right,
So
and
in a way, we're
Right.
paying for it. Okay.
And like we said, it is a dedicated, like you said, your own lane and your own highway, but it has no other exits either. It's,
Yeah.
Just ours.
just ours. So-
Refresh my memory, what is the time frame of installation of that? So if we agree to all this, which it seems like we are,
Last I talked to Lightpath, they stayed 60 days
so, okay,
from agreement till.
From
installation.
so 3 months, more or less.
I'm hoping for 60 days. We have everything in place right now. We have all the equipment. I'd love to get this in and going as soon as
Mhm.
possible.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Do we need to do anything, resolution for the manager to sign? Okay, so
Mhm.
we're all good? Am I getting a yes on this? Yeah? Okay, so we're all good. So we need to
Great.
move this forward so you guys can get going. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Don't
Thank you,
have to
fine
stay unless you
officers.
want. Thank you for coming in.
You can.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chief Sergeant. Again, you're welcome to stay,
Thank you, guys.
but we wish you a good night. And now Dale will talk about the 2023 budget adjustments.
Oh, thank you again. And good evening again. So as a precursor, because I believe we're on to do a presentation next meeting. Review.
Yes. At the next meeting, we'll be providing first quarter update on our major projects, and we'll have a brief update on our finances. But this is really closing out 2023 in anticipation of audit.
Yes, our village audit will start on Monday. In anticipation of that, we have some house cleaning items for our budget, where items are slightly over, or over because we knew they were going to be over and have to move the money, such in the case of contingency. So first in line, the village manager's overall budget was slightly over for additional personnel expenses. People were less sick this year and did not then got sick instead of increasing our budget. So that's technically a good thing, but and some small equipment items for corporation council. We had to order an additional computer, additional personnel expenses, again, a good thing, because people are working their hearts out. We are slightly over in labor council. We have increased our 2024 budgeted amount, so I do not anticipate us exceeding budget this year, along with changing our labor council as well. Our general legal services line, we are slightly over as well, and we did also increase that budget line for 2024. So hopefully anticipating that we will be covered for that area as well. In 1930, which is our small claims and general liability, I did have to make a reserve balance adjustment to bring over funds to our internal service fund, which holds the liability. Since we are self-insured, we have a self-insurance fund for our general liability auto portion of self-insurance, and we have a workers' comp portion for our reserves. In years past, we've been able to absorb any changes within the internal service fund with funds that we already had. That is the case for our workers' comp reserve adjustment this year, but it is not the case for our general liability. We did have to do a budget transfer over of about 220,000, which is 224,500, which is split across general water and sewer to fund the reserve balance over in the general service fund. So the money is still here. It's just a matter of moving it from the operating funds, general water and sewer, over to the 37 fund, which is the general liability reserve account. So the next area was when we were creating the budget for 2023, I don't think we had all of our insurance premiums outlined, and especially cyber liability, which increased. So we have to do a slight budget adjustment to 2023 to cover that. A small amount for our MTA taxes. We did redeem the last piece of the ban for the Broadway Bridge. It was the only piece that was left, and it was either pay it off or you go to bond, and it wasn't worth it to go to bond for the 197,000 that was left on that balance. So we're doing a budget adjustment to cover those costs. The engineering department, the consultant line, we had additional costs associated with the traffic calming study. So we're doing a slight budget adjustment of
How much was the traffic calming study? Oh, okay.
It may have been slightly more than that. I think it was about 15, but we had some funds in there. Yes. But for the balance of it, we have to move 6,300 to clear the gap. Yes. In traffic control, we're doing a budget increase of 18,750. We had additional signalization and, DBW had purchased, a message board that was for 15,000. That was charged to this line. For the police department, as you know, we, had 2 years of settled contracts with retro, that went across 4 years. We did have the majority of these funds already budgeted in the contingency line in the budget. So we're really just moving from one area to the other to make that balanced in the department. For the Youth Bureau, we did have additional expenses for 2023. So we're requesting a budget adjustment of 73,100. But they also had additional grant funding during the year. I believe it was about 140,000 more than we had budgeted. So the increase in the expenses are definitely offset by the revenue side. In the end, when I looked at the expenses for the Youth Bureau, actual expenses, they had 277,000, but they brought in revenues of 245. So just, a
Very
slight,
close. Yeah.
very close, and such a new program for them to be
Yeah.
operating that efficiently is fabulous. They're doing a
It's great.
fabulous.
And they're growing.
Yeah. Fabulous job. So recreation also had increased expenses, but those increases again were associated with increased program activity and revenues coming in. So we'll be doing a slight budget adjustment for those lines. And the water fund, we're doing a budget adjustment. We did pay off the final phase 3 of the ban for the original borrow that was done for the water treatment plant. So that debt is gone and we will be starting fresh with the new, the anticipated project as we move forward. That was 1.3 million. And the other small piece of the reserve adjustment is there. The reserve adjustment for general liability in the sewer fund was absorbed because we did have money left in the budget line for sewer. So overall, in terms of numbers, because of course I have to look at those as I'm doing the audit. We had originally planned and appropriated $9,974 for capital projects during 2023, which meant we were using that amount of fund balance. In essence, at the end of the day, we only used $4,024,600. So a little less than anticipated, but that gives us a buffer as we have more projects coming on board in 2024 that will be able to allocate fund balance in this year to go towards any of those capital projects. The water fund, even with paying off the ban, as well as funding $683,150 of capital projects for water, we were able to increase the fund balance in the water fund by 1 million. Well, these are unaudited numbers. I just want to preface that. $1,670,421 is anticipated to go back to fund balance. But this sets us up because as we all know, going forward, once we do a borrow, the first year, the payment on any borrow is going to be 2025. So it's good that we cleaned off the old debt.
Right.
We're ready, for the new debt. The sewer
Cost of
fund,
money though has gone up, right?
it's staying flat. I was hoping that it would get reduced, but the feds seem to not
No,
be moving in that direction.
it might only because it's election year, but generally
Mm.
they don't, they'd like to keep
They-
it low, but I
yeah.
don't think it will. But
They-
it's not
they-
my field. but-
They had originally predicted that they were going to do 3 rate adjustments down, and last I heard last week,
No,
they weren't planning on doing
Right.
any at in the near future, so.
okay, but it's pretty
In
steady.
terms of, right, and we're not going out for long-term debt at this point.
Good.
What we're borrowing is a 1-year ban, so you're tied in for that 1 year
Right.
to that interest rate. And then, you know, by the time that we're ready to go to the bond, which would be 3 or 4, even 5 years out,
Mhm.
you know, it's going to be a whole different environment anyway, at that point.
Right.
So, but I think we're okay on that because and of course revenues fluctuate for water, sewer, because it's dependent on usage and what's going on in the, you know, the seasons and all that. But at the end of the day, if we had not paid off that ban amount or funded those capital projects, we would have actually brought back to fund balance $3,737,000. But this is because we're anticipating having to make a large debt payment. And so in that, I feel right now comfortable till actuality happens.
So what do you need from us?
I will be presenting the budget adjustment resolutions on for next Wednesday's meeting. And I actually do need to add one for capital. It's just moving money from one of the portable generator capital projects over to the other portable generator.
Okay.
There's no budgetary impact. It's really just moving from one capital project to the other.
Anybody have any questions? This way, Manny?
I do. Thanks, Mayor. Dale, thank you. Very informative as always. A little traveling obviously because it's a big numbers, big portions from different departments on a budget increase, I guess. That sometimes is very conflicted with what we are trying to do on budget. You know,
Yes.
so you know, some of the stuff are,
Yes.
you know, that we don't predict. There's a lot of stuff, you know, some of the big numbers in here, we cannot predict that. Sure. We can budget, but we cannot predict.
Mhm.
But some other stuff, I think we are be able to predict a lot of the stuff. So I'm gonna ask you, obviously, we're just what, April? And you start budget what, next month again?
Pretty much.
Literally,
Mhm.
you're going through all this analysis and all those other stuff. So I think, you know, for
Mhm.
2025 budget, you
Mhm.
know, some of the stuff, even though, you know, you may want it be within budget, but it seems that the history that we had for the past few years, you know, some of the stuff, I don't want to say could be avoided, but it could
Mhm.
definitely be reflected in our budget itself. So we
Mhm.
can have a little bit more of, I don't want to say realistic numbers, because I don't think budget is ever realistic.
Right.
Unless we know is a Con Ed bill or Verizon bill, which is, those are realistics. But something
Mhm.
like this in here, I think will be more helpful, at least for me,
Mhm.
to kind of soften the hit on 2025 when the board goes back and sees these numbers, because we don't see numbers of
Mhm.
2024, 23 until almost the first quarter of the year.
Right, right.
So in this
Mhm.
one, we see numbers almost on the beginning of the second quarter of the year now,
Mhm.
which usually we don't.
Mhm.
You know, I don't recall, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't recall seeing numbers like this in the past few years. Some of the
I
stuff has
think-
increased, you know, that I have seen, you know,
Right,
but
right.
other stuff, I don't remember seeing that.
And I think, you know, a lot of it is, you know, 2 of the larger items, we're just cleaning up debt and
agree.
to not get
Yeah.
tied into
Of course,
a
yeah.
high interest
Yeah.
rate. So
And
it
I
just
agree.
made sense.
You know, when I saw the bridge, I
Mhm.
was like, wait, we finished our project a couple years back, you know, but yeah,
Yes.
no, it definitely makes sense. There
It was a 2019 ban, so
Yeah,
you have
okay.
5
Yeah, 5 years
years,
for that.
you know, to pay it off or
Yeah.
move it. And then, of course, with the settled contracts, that was really just, an event we knew was going to happen. We did not know when it would happen.
Of course.
And we have been planning,
So the
for
employee
that.
benefits portion of that, the 826, more or less. if you
We're,
just give
we're,
me
we're actually decreasing.
Yeah, but so my question is why that number?
Because our health insurance costs came in lower than
Okay.
projected,
That's right.
about 600,000. Our workers' comp, and this is just general fund.
Yeah.
Workers' comp, expenses came in about $200,000 less, than projected.
Yeah.
Social Security was, about 130, I think, $1,000 less, so all those, so there's more,
Exactly.
under
So
budget than this number. This is just the number we needed to
to be on.
wash everything out to make everything square
So
within the lines.
That's also helpful because you
Mhm.
guys are you're very conservative
Yes.
when it comes with numbers.
We try.
So, but some of
Mhm.
the stuff again reflects. When
Mhm.
we looked at this, or when we read this, it actually reflects. So I want to thank you for that and all the hard work that you do.
Thank you.
But yeah, so
Mhm.
I guess
Right.
looking
Yes.
forward to 2024 next month. for you.
Yes.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
Hey, Dale, thanks very much, as always.
Thank you.
Looking good.
Mhm.
I was reading the papers yesterday that there are municipalities that are in really bad shape. Their projections were off.
Mm.
Everybody does the best they can, no names mentioned, but it's a big deal.
Mhm.
Whether it's the school, whether it's the municipality, whether it's towns, villages, hamlets, whatever. So, very grateful that we're tracking correctly.
Mhm. And I thank
Appreciate it.
the board and, obviously the manager's office too. It's a huge, consolidated effort of everybody
Appreciate
and the
that.
departments.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we're on to the next agenda item.
Thank you very much, Dale. The next agenda item, Corporation Counsel and Assistant Village Manager will be talking about adjustments we need to make to our fee schedule. There are two related pieces. So one is has to do with a surcharge through our parking app. And the other one is the fine associated with parking in a handicap space. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Stuart and Maddie.
You want me to take this one? All right, thank you, Karen. So this is actually pretty simple. The board may remember last May when we approached the board to ask for a couple of changes to the fee schedule regarding parking violations. So we made a couple tweaks. Some of them were very modest, $5 on a parking ticket, $10. Some of them were a little bit more severe, sort of aligned with the severity of the infraction. So I believe in the past, if you got a handicap ticket, so basically if you've parked without a handicap placard in a handicap parking spot in the village, I believe the fee in the past was $75, and then you paid a $30 surcharge to New York State. The $30 surcharge, because it was a violation of vehicle and traffic law under New York State, was considered mandatory. So assuming you didn't get any sort of plea from the prosecutor, you were in at about $100, which, I think we could argue, whether that's a slap on the wrist or not, for something that's pretty serious. So it was recommended that we increase those fees markedly. We came in a little bit lower than even what was suggested to us and what other communities nearby us charge. At the time, we had two different things in our fee schedule. One was if you committed that violation by parking in a handicap spot in a municipal parking lot, and the other one was on a street. I cannot recall, though I do recall there was some discussion about the difference between one and the other. We settled at $150 for one and $250 for the other. Because, again, based on our conversations with our new parking enforcement vendor team, bringing those into the village code as opposed to being written under the VTL, I will say believed that then the $30 surcharge would no longer be applicable. As it turns out, it is recommended that $30 surcharge be reinstated. So that is the first part that Manager DeTore was alluding to. So right now, again, we have the 150 and the 250. We've not been charging the $30. Turns out we ought to be charging the $30 surcharge on both of those. So that's recommendation number one. Recommendation number two is also sort of born out of it's not clear that the severity of one is worse than the severity of the other. If you park in a spot that's marked ADA and you don't have a placard, it should probably be the same fine regardless. But also it was suggested by a resident and then also some of our staff that we sort of increase signage around our ADA parking spots. And something that we've also learned is that the reason that the fines for this violation are typically so high is not only just to deter people from having done it, but also to bring some of that revenue into the community to increase education about the need for these kind of spaces and keeping them clear. So something that we are going to propose is bringing both of these violations to the 250 mark. So one of them moved from 150 to 250. And that will also help our DPW because what we'd like to do is also increase the signage around these parking spaces, which I think a member of the board had also brought up when we went over this back in May. So basically any place that there is a handicap parking spot, there will be a sign that says ADA accessible parking, $250 fine for violating, something like that. So this is the proposition that we're putting forward. Again, this is aligned with, the research that we've done and also recommendations that we've been given. And this should be a pretty easy fix if the board is agreeable. So we can put a resolution together for the fee schedule next week, and that will be effective immediately.
I'm going to start with, I support the recommendation as stated, and we'll go to my right to start off. If there's any comments, conversations, etc. You're good. You're good. Gentlemen on this side. comments?
Sounds good to me.
I have
You're
a
good?
question.
Okay.
So obviously, when you came in last May, which I don't recall, I'll have to go watch the meeting, I guess, if anything. But your recommendation at the time, which I agree with what you're talking about now, I'm just trying to get a little more feedback. So at that time, you said you felt that the $30 fee to the state, it wasn't needed at that point. And obviously, I'm assuming other people on staff agree with that. You got that recommended from someone. Who is requesting this change?
So no one is requesting this change. The reason why this came up is because we were looking at the handwritten parking tickets. So as the board knows, we've moved to the handheld for parking violations. Recently, we had to also update our handwritten stock, which had been the same for quite some time. And it was during this whole process, the board may recall, we also discovered the discrepancy with the $20 paid after 7 days. This is sort of an additional piece of that. So when going through and sort of ticking and tying what we include in the handwritten ticket against what the schedule FBS has against what's in our fee schedule, we noticed this difference between not only the 150 and the 250, but the $30. And this is something that, again, bringing it into the village code, my understanding at the time, I'm not sure if Stewart's was the same, was that if it was coming under the village code, there would no longer be a state surcharge associated. We do still have 3 parking violations that are written under the VTL. One is for no registration for less than 60 days. One is for no registration for more than 60 days. And the third is for no front license plate. Those all are still written under VTL, and they have a mandated $93 surcharge attached to that goes to the state. Our conversations with FBS when this did come up was in the event that this got audited, their recommendation is that we reinstate the $30 surcharge
So
because
we
it's
got
something.
audited?
No,
Okay.
because it's something that they would like to see. So this was something that was sort of born out of the conversations. We're trying to be proactive to make sure that, if this is something we missed, we acknowledge it and we're moving forward to do it the way that we understand is the proper way to have done it.
So it's 250 plus the $30.
Correct. And I have never been a prosecutor, so I can't speak from that end. I'm not sure how our prosecutor or our corporation counsel is ever inclined to change those fees based on someone's driving history or something of that nature. But it would be without a plea deal or anything of that nature, to my understanding, 250 plus 30, 280 total.
Okay. All right, thank you.
All right. So we'll have it for next time. I think we're moving on to the next topic.
Oh, okay. No, I just didn't know if I missed anything. Okay.
No, thank you. Think we're good?
Okay, thank you. So the next topic is, you may remember a while back, we discussed the guidance that we were getting from the Office of mismanagement on tax revenue sharing with the town. And right now, if there's no resolution, we would split any revenue for cannabis revenue from sold in the village of Ossining 50-50 with the town. We're still waiting for a little bit more guidance, but right now we are at a point the state would like to have a resolution demonstrating if we want to do more than 50-50, if we want to change it to a different percentage, we would have to have a resolution. It appears that resolution would be signed by the town and the village. However, how that is ultimately negotiated is a little bit ambiguous right now. So we do want to flag this as something that we are aware of. We do want to have a resolution, and it's something that should be on our radar. We are looking into other municipalities that have similar issues, what they're doing currently. Stuart, I don't know, do you have any more detail you'd like to add to that? So this is something we want to take a closer look at, but we are putting it on the radar. One of the things we found with the Office of Cannabis Management, it's a lot of hurry up and wait. So as we think we're being told we need to do something, when we actually go to do it, we find there are many unanswered questions. So again, we're going to talk to NICOM. We'll do some more research on this. But again, this is just putting it on the radar. We will come back to you with more guidance and more of an indication of what other municipalities are doing. So then when we do bring this to discussion with the town, we have some rationale to base our decision on.
Okay. Any thoughts? So if the town gets a cannabis retail, are they supposed to share with us?
No, we get nothing.
Okay. We're just a weird setup. It's supposed to
Yeah.
be village, town, county. It's just that in our case, the village is different. It's like only from a voting perspective, is it village, town, county, state, federal. Size-wise and budget-wise and everything else-wise, the police, the this, the that, it's all us. They're like 6,500 people with a small budget. We're like close to 30,000 with large budgets. We got the water, the police, the fire. We're just an anomaly, and so it wasn't set up for anomalies. It was set up for, yeah, for everybody else. I came up with, just to throw out the conversation, just to begin, I wrote down 80-20. Karen and I spoke the other day. There's not a lot of precedent, but you got to put a stake in the ground. I don't see anything happening in the town. We've got 2 possibilities in the village, and we do all the work. It's all on us. So frankly, we should get 100%. If they have a dispensary, they should get 100%, but that's,
They are getting.
Oh,
well,
but-
they are,
but
yes,
do-
they
do we-
will.
We
They
have,
will, we get nothing.
we have to give them something, correct?
So I
We
will
have to give them, in the absence of any resolution, any action on the board's part, we would give them 50%.
So if we put a resolution together, then we could do 100% to the village.
We could, the gray area and the part we don't know is we need an agreement.
I understand that, but we could agree to 100% if they're not giving us anything and they have 4 stores out there.
We need to get them to agree to it too.
You have to put something that you think you could
All
rationalize.
right, 95.5.
I thought that with the
Not getting that
clerk,
from them, but-
with the clerk, and other IMAs, I thought 80-20 seemed right, but I may be off. but it
There's
seems like the
there's
right
certainly a lot of different ways you can look at it. I think that the way that, based on our IMAs and other agreements, we do look at the density of the village, the impact on the village versus the impact on the town. In this regard, the village would be, obviously, there's an economic benefit, but all of the support services, everything else are village services. They're not town services that would be supporting this in any meaningful way. So again, I in the interest of equity, typically we look at things in proportion to the size and density of the village versus the size and density of the town.
6,500 and, you know, people like us live in the village and the town. I thought 80-20, but you think it's too little or? And 80 to us, 20 to them.
Mayor, I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry, I'm leaning back. I'm doing my stretch. Sorry about that. I was going 80-20. You think it should be 90-10, Bob?
I prefer 100%, but
We know. So do I. No disagreement.
Do we have any indication about what they're interested in?
I'm sure they're interested in leaving it at 50-50.
They're hoping we'll do nothing, so it's 50-50.
I mean,
I mean,
honestly, I
We're
think
negotiating with ourselves, right?
we are negotiating with ourselves.
Okay.
Yeah.
right.
So I would go with Bob. Let's go with 95.5, see what they say. And they say,
Yep.
no, we don't want to do 95.5.
Start high.
We want to do 80-20. Okay, fine.
We thought, one of the ways is,
Okay.
you know, Greenberg is probably an example that we can look at, given that they have multiple villages in Greenberg that
Interesting.
they're doing, you know, some are have not, approved cannabis sales, some have. So we'll look at, you know, we'll look at some examples. So I think that the important part is if we're going to go into this discussion where we're negotiating against ourselves with the town, we want to have a framework so we can say based on, you know, and it's something we can also ask our colleagues at
And it would
NICOM
work
to
in both-
advise on.
Right. But if you have an agreement, you could, couldn't you have an agreement in both ways? If they do open a dispensary in the town, that they could get 95.5, or they're not allowed to?
The town is not obligated, and I don't see that they would. I don't think they can I don't know if they can voluntarily give us anything, but they're
So
not
we're here
obligated.
all night, and this is what I said,
Yeah.
we're discussing numbers, so let's go with 90. Okay, so, I'm sorry, so let's just start with 95.5, because really they're doing nothing. So we're doing everything.
So I do have a few questions, and probably Stuart, you'll be able to help me. Refresh my memory. What is the resolution that the town took in regards to cannabis?
Same as us.
So say, it's pretty much
Yeah.
the same as we.
Yes.
Right.
Okay. And Karen, sorry, when do we have to have a decision made for this agreement?
We would probably want to do it in anticipation of the fact that we'll be receiving revenue once somebody place
More or
opens.
less, do we have 6 months, 3 months, a month?
I would say like over the next few months, we should
So
make a
before then-
decision. We have some,
Before everything, so I want to say,
before we open a cannabis dispensary, we want to definitely get it
so the
done.
conversation needs to start more or less.
Right, and that's
Yes.
why we're bringing up, we originally thought like we'd be able to, you know, we were, and again, because this will be a discussion that probably will go back and forth, we wanted to make the board aware, we'll be, you know, I will talk to the supervisor and relay this conversation, and then we'll start, looking at what other municipalities are doing. Again, it's not really clear that, you know, if the town, it's not really clear to me that the town can say, no, we're not negotiating on, you know, the fact is you have to negotiate it, but it's not clear to me that the town can just say, sorry, no. I don't know if that would hold up if, given the situation. So when we started asking these questions, we realized we didn't have, there was nobody who had any answers at this point.
Right.
It's sort of like,
I'm sorry, I just have one more question in regards to taxation itself. Just refresh my memory,
Mhm.
because this is a little bit different than having a business. Sell taxes is totally different.
Yeah.
You know, it goes to the county and it gets
Yep.
divided.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that. This is cannabis taxation itself.
Mhm.
What is the percentage of their taxes that we are talking about?
4%.
Thank you.
And then, as Stuart explained, of the 4%,
email, yeah.
25% goes
Yeah.
to
Goes in
the
the email.
county.
No, she's reading it.
Right,
Yeah.
so of the 4%, and then I think I gave an example in the email about, you know, actual dollar figures. But of that 4%, 25% goes to the county, of the
Right.
remaining 75 in the absence of action of the board, that 75%
Is
of the
divided.
4% would be split in half.
I just, again,
Yeah.
and I read the email, yes.
Yeah.
You know, I'm
No,
just
understood.
making sure the members of the public, whoever may be
These
watching at this
numbers
point,
are of
it's pretty much,
4%.
yes, it's already
Yeah.
standard. It's not like, you know, we're gonna decide this is the percentage that we want and this is how it's based on.
correct.
So
It's
it's already,
still,
they
yeah,
already set out the percentage.
There's some formula
Yeah, there's a
already.
formula already that we're gonna get. It's not like we're gonna get, you know, $500,000, you know.
Well,
we'll see.
You know, but that's sort of, there's a formula, there's a process that we have to go
Exactly.
through that, and that's, you know, that's what we've
It-
done.
it-
We just have to work on the percentage that we want to share, if anything, with the town.
Correct.
okay.
Correct. And,
Yes.
oh, I'm sorry, one more topic, yes. I'm sorry, I'm losing my notes here. What did I just do with my agenda? Go ahead.
It's the last one, vacant storefront.
Vacant storefront, that's right.
Folks, a couple of weeks back, Valerie presented the proposed local law on vacant storefronts. The board had some comments. The local law has now been revised to expand the definition of vacant storefront to include where it's unused for commercial purposes, consistent with the zoning code, or is not open for business with an ongoing business concern operating in the space during customary business hours, which is actually a language that is in the Croton statute with regard to vacant storefronts. So that would go in there. There are a few other changes with regard to what the vacant storefront plan has to provide. There's an insurance provision in here now that the owner must have at least $1 million and $2 million policy of insurance with the village named as a certificate holder. What that means is the village would be notified if the insurance lapsed for any reason. There's also a provision in here that relates to what the penalties would be for offenses. And unlike the prior situation where the violation or if someone did not register and they wanted to challenge it, would go to what was then called the Vacant Building Review Board. It would now go to the Zoning Board of Appeals. And they would actually hear that appeal, but they have 10 days to file the appeal. If they don't, it then becomes a final determination of the building inspector. So that's with regard to vacant buildings and vacant storefronts. The code would take out all the references to the fees because we're just going to refer to what's in the fee schedule. There's no need to keep it actually in here. It's just surplus language. It's not needed. And basically that's essentially what we did. But we did want to tweak, as we said, we tweaked the definition of the vacant storefront and put in additional requirements with regard to maintenance of the storefronts. But it is, the board is okay. It is ready next week to be called for a public hearing.
Now, just tell me again, this insurance bit, what is that about?
The insurance requirement is that the owner of the building, this specifically, shall maintain commercial general liability insurance with minimum policy limits of $1 million per person and $2 million for vacant building and vacant storefronts. A certificate of insurance should be submitted with the vacant building or vacant storefront registration. The village will be named as a certificate holder and will be provided with a minimum of 20 days prior written notice of any cancellation, material modification, or non-renewal of the insurance. So that basically we're saying that the vacant building, we want to make sure it's insured. This is in addition to the escrow requirement.
And what if they don't have the insurance? What are we doing?
Well, then they would be in violation, and the violation then, because they couldn't register, would be for a first violation with not less than 500 or more than 1,000. Then it could go, then it steadily goes up to 3,500, then up to that to $5,000.
Okay. Do we know what it costs to take out a $2 million policy?
Depends on the property.
I'm just wondering if we're actually creating work, because if I owned a vacant building, I'm just playing it out in my head, and I had to pay $500 a month to get a $2 million insurance versus the fees that we're charging, I'd say, fine, then I'll pay the fees because it's costing me more to do the insurance, or it's not a reasonable number. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, and causing the municipality actually more work.
If you don't have the insurance.
Yeah,
And the property burns to the ground,
right.
that's his loss. But if you don't have insurance, the insurance is what will basically be allowed to make the repairs.
Got it.
If you have to do that. We are requiring a minimum $5,000 escrow.
which all these owners will have to
The
do.
vacant, for vacant
For vacant
buildings, not
buildings,
for all the
storefronts.
businesses, for vacant.
Vacant buildings and
Right.
storefronts, there'll have to be a $5,000 escrow. Which
Okay,
will be of immediate use to the building department, because this way, if they have to get in there to do something, they'll have the ability to
right,
make.
because right now they've made it impossible, the vacant storefronts. Okay, any comments or questions? Are we good with this? I know, thank you for going back and revising based on comments. You're good?
You good?
I'm good.
Everybody's
Of course,
good?
thanks, Bob.
Of course.
Give me some more time to ask my only question, actually. So thank you, Stuart. I agree with a lot, pretty much 95% of the modifications and changes. I'm still not clear, and I don't agree with the insurance part. But so explain to me a little bit more into details, because if I have a building, I already have insurance, correct? I have to have insurance for a building.
You'd hope,
Well, they usually have.
but what
Sure.
if you don't have a mortgage, and you don't have insurance?
Okay.
Generally, you only have insurance if you basically, or.
It's
if
part of the
you're
mortgage, because the
occupied.
bank wants
Otherwise,
it.
May not care. If you don't have a bank behind you, they may not care.
So if you bought it for cash, or if you just paid it down at
Okay.
this point, or you inherited and it's already paid off. It's because banks require insurance. That's really why people have them.
Got it. All right. So, and I think, I would like to understand a little more of what, I guess I agree with Rika in this regards. Is like, is it cheaper for me to require the fines that actually pay for this liability? And it could be as simple as, what happens if the building does have insurance, but does not have the $1 million to $2 million that we are requesting? Now we telling the whole, the landlord to increase that insurance as part of this request. So and obviously there's a reason why sometimes it's difficult to rent. One of the board members here, it was seeing that, he's seeing a lot more development on the residential level and not so much on the commercial. So I don't want to make sure that even though we know there's a problem in storefronts, that's the reason why we're doing this. But I don't want to, put an additional burden to the landlord on some of them that are good, obviously, or they're trying to rent those spaces, and adding this additional language to this particular.
This is really directed at the buildings that are vacant for months and
Years.
months and months and months.
Yeah, no, I understand
If
that.
someone is basically vacant for 45 days, it's by the time you get around to it, they're not even gonna be on the registry because it's not gonna matter.
Yeah.
But you're looking at the places that are just vacant for a long period of time. So you want to basically say, you're gonna do this, you're gonna, it's security to us also that basically they're doing this. Otherwise, the building is literally sitting there as a fire trap.
No, I understand.
Aside from the ugliness, I think it's worth trying, because I don't think that we could figure out exactly what it's gonna cost every single building owner. The insurance, because they might own other buildings and have an umbrella policy. We just don't know. And it's, we could spend a long time figuring out whether it costs them $389 a month to pay, or $1,389, or
Or it could be
we just don't know.
a year.
Yeah, it could be nothing,
Yeah.
because they own other things. I think we should try it. Sounds reasonable, and I think we could always change things.
This is.
I agree with you. You don't want to discourage. But we have certain buildings that we've talked about.
I agree.
You know what this is
Of
geared
course.
towards, yeah.
No,
Well,
but
the insurance is one thing, but they gotta maintain a sprinkler system and a fire system too. That could be cost prohibitive.
But that's because the building's sitting empty and.
No, I understand why it is. We're talking about nickels and dimes here. Let's compare apples to apples.
Look, we have X number of buildings. They're not a lot. There are actually fewer buildings now. There are fewer buildings now than when I moved here. I mean, not a half, but a big chunk of downtown was empty. But they're not just empty. We also know the characters involved, and it's years, it's not months. And real estate is about money. You leave it empty, but if you lowered your rent, you'd find people. So it's like nobody wants to rent. It's nobody wants to rent at these prices that are being set. Let's be realistic here. Look, it's not going to ever be perfect, but we've been talking about this for years, and I think we finally have something to work with.
I mean, we had something, we just adding and modifying to these two and specific.
Yeah.
fronts.
Yeah. Specific to this issue.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna support it because I think it's pretty damn close to what we've been asking for. Nothing's ever perfect. We're good?
I'm good.
You're good? You're okay, not good, but But okay. All right, we're gonna move it forward and I'm sure there'll be a public hearing. Okay. I think that's it. Thank you. So it is 9:50 and I'd like to have a motion to adjourn for executive session for legal. For legal, right?
So
Yes.
move.
Second.
Aye.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, 9:50. We will see you next week at the courthouse, which will be very exciting because we are going to also be congratulating a number of people who have been promoted in our police department. That's what we're planning to do in the beginning of the session, correct? Okay, fabulous. And let me do a promo for those that are still with us to attend Earth Day, which I should have done all the way in the beginning, but I'll do it next week as well. Okay, thank you and good night.